So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's 2:30 here in Atlanta, so it's good afternoon for me. So I'm Harvey Meyer, as Pat has told you, and just so you understand what you're listening to, I'm originally from New York City. I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, so I have an accent that's unlike everybody else that lives in the southern part of the United States. They all have a southern accent, and I don't. But I can understand them and they can understand me, so it all works out. I've been living here in Atlanta for 25 years now, but once you grow up with a New York accent, then you have that accent for the rest of your life. So we're in my shop right now, and we're going to start out first. I'm going to give you a tour of the shop. For those of you that are expecting to see one of those wonderful, beautiful workshops with wonderful cabinets and workshop furniture and so forth, you'll be very disappointed because this is not one of them. And also, if you're interested or hoping to see one of those wonderfully organized workshops where everything is in its place, again, you'll be disappointed because this is not one of those shops. This is my workshop, and it works for me. Today it's about as clean as it ever gets because I cleaned it up for this event, but it typically doesn't look as good as it is right now, although to some of you, you may say, well, how does he work in this place? But I do, and it's big enough for me, and I get things done. So we'll get started. What I'm going to do is switch over to an iPhone camera so that we can walk around with that one and show you things. And then after I'm done with that, I'm going to take the camera and we're going to walk around the house with it. And I'll show you some of the work that I do. Mostly I'll show you my basket illusion work, and I'll talk about that quite a bit. But I'll also show you some of the other work that I've done over the years. I don't do much of anything other than basket illusion now, but that's what it is. So I'm going to mute this one here before I turn on the other one. All right, so we'll start out with these two doors that are over here. These are doors that exit my shop out into my backyard. There's a patio over there, but I do want to call your attention to this poster here, which used to live on a New York City subway train. And back in somewhere in the 1980s, when I was out with the fellows after work, and I had probably one gin and tonic too many, I decided that I should take that sign off the subway car and bring it home with me. And I've kept that sign ever since the mid-'80s sometime. And it's, of course, advertising for Harvey's Bristol. And it says, give him a Harvey's night. And I just thought that was a fun thing to have. Not that it's ever done me any good, but anyway. So here we go to the turning side of the house. This is my primary lathe right here. This is a Powermatic 3520. And this is the corner where I pretty much do all of my turning work. And then I'm going to try not to get you dizzy as I move around with the camera. Over on this wall behind me is where I keep all my weapons of mass destruction here. Pretty much tools that I use regularly are on this rack. On the right-hand side are all the bowl gouges, and on the left-hand side is more of the spindle type tools. And then hanging on there, there are all kinds of calipers and other things that are necessary to do the job, as well as an air hose handy, because an air hose is one of the most important things that you use in the shop. And then I've got these cabinets over here that are loaded with tools, and I'm not ashamed to say that I have more tools than I will ever need. These drawers are all loaded. This is mostly of my hollowing tools in here, various boring bars. And then as we work our way down, we have a drawer full of scrapers here, and extra bowl gouges just in case 10 or so that I have up on the rack run out on me, and so forth. If I went through the drawers, you could see all that. And then over here in this little cabinet here, these little slide out shelves are all full of tools. And I do have way more tools than I will ever need in the rest of my life. But I do pick up a lot of tools at estate sales. So most of the tools I didn't pay full retail price. This little thing with the drawers over here is just where I keep sanding discs and little scraps of sandpaper for, you know, doing small little things. And I do have my dust collector. You call it dust extraction over there. But here in the US, most of us call it a dust collector or dust sucker. So I do have that right at the lathe over there. And then as we walk around, and I'll turn around this way, and we have the other Powermatic lathe over here. This is my older original one. This is the A model. And I've had this one since I think 2003, and it's had some work done. It has a new inverter on it, and I also replaced the bearings once. When I got the second one at an estate sale, I decided I would keep the first one just in case the second one ever broke or went down, or if I ever wanted to teach another student in the shop, I'd have a spare lathe just for the student. Although I have to say it probably hasn't been used in 5 years. I do plug it in every now and then just to make sure it spins, but it's literally I haven't turned anything on it in probably 5 years. Over here we have the bandsaw. This is a Jet 14-inch bandsaw with a riser block. I wish I had a bigger one, but it serves my needs for what I do these days. Hanging out in the corner here is the dust extractor. This is a fairly large one. It was a lot bigger before I took the bags off and put the canister filter on it. It's a 2.5 horsepower motor on there, and it's pretty much plumbed throughout the shop. I've got sewer and drain pipe all over the place so that I can pick up dust all around the shop. My only regret is that when I put the pipe in, I wish I would have used 6-inch pipe instead of 4-inch. It would have made the machine a lot more efficient, but I didn't do that, and it's a fairly large job to take all that pipe down and replace it, so I kind of live with it, but it still works and I get by with it. In this cabinet here is stuff, and I won't show you what's in there except that in there is stuff. And the only time that cabinet was ever what I would consider organized was the day I moved it into the shop and it was empty. That's the last time it was ever organized. But I know where everything is in there, and I could find everything without having to look for it because I put it where it is. And if I clean it up and put everything in different orders and so forth, I probably can't find anything. And I have a philosophy about my shop here, and I'm going to tell you about that as we walk around. Here's a jointer that probably hasn't been used in, I don't know, 15, 20 years. I used to do furniture work, but ever since I started turning roughly 20 years ago, I haven't built a piece of furniture since. I don't do any flat work anymore. As you can see, I've got quite a supply of clamps on this wall, and there's plenty more on some other walls in the shop. And I also have some clamps in boxes that I've never even opened, just because you can never have too many clamps. And we have the sliding compound miter saw over here, followed by the drill press. And this is a workbench that never really sees much work because I don't do much work that gets done on a workbench. Most of what I do is on the lathe. And then when I'm done on the lathe, I go to the recliner chair to do my burning and coloring. That's typically for my basket illusion work. When I used to do some carving and some piercing, well, then that used to get done here at the workbench. But I don't do that anymore, although someday maybe I will. I do have an air set up at the end of the bench. Typically, when I'm doing piercing work, I would connect my dental drill to the air supply that's over at the end of the bench. And I would sit on a chair over here and I would do my piercing over here. And you could see a spindle sander hiding in the corner there. And then on this wall is a long bench that goes from one side of the shop to the other. And this bench typically just gets clogged up with stuff. But I did clean it up and straighten it out a little bit so that you people wouldn't think that I'm a total mess. But I do have a lifetime supply of sandpaper. So you can see over there, there's sandpaper. Down in that box, hiding in the corner, is sandpaper. In the drawers, in this cabinet here, it's more sandpaper. There's more in other places hidden. Over here is a spare grinder. It's not my primary grinder. And on the floor is even an older grinder that never sees the light of day. Hiding under the bench is some of my wood stash. So over here, there are some platter blanks, and there's a nice piece of rosewood burl and some camphor burl. The tall piece in the back is some koa from Hawaii. And then on this side, I'll walk around here, trying not to get you dizzy. That's just my stash of big leaf maple burl. I bought that about, I want to say 10 years ago. Had it trucked in from Oregon, and it's been sitting there for 10 years. I spent a lot of money on it, but someday maybe I'll get to it and do something with it. Here's a bunch of roughed out bowls that are waiting for me to finish. Some of them go back to 2005, 2006. I don't turn many bowls anymore, but I do occasionally do them. Just some hardware in those little drawers over there. This is my primary grinder right here, with 2 CBN wheels on it. On the left side, on my left, is an 80 grit, and on the right side is the 80 grit, and on the left side is a 350 grit wheel. And I've got my berry grind jigs down below. Standing here in the middle of the shop is the table saw, which is typically used as a table, not as a saw. It's cleaned off now, and I actually did use it as a table saw this weekend. I did cut some wood on there. But again, it's a table, and it's a good sturdy one. I did clean it off just for you guys. Over here, back in the lathe corner, you could see my video setup that I use for doing my remote demonstrations. And when we come back in the shop later, we'll talk about that a little bit at the end of the demo for those people that are interested in the technical side of all this. Okay, so now we're going to walk out of the shop area itself into a separate room, which I'm in the basement of my house here. And then down here, this section is mostly for storage, but I do keep a lot of stuff here, and I do some work over here. So I have this little mini lathe over here that is just set up strictly for doing threading. So it has a Baxter Threadmaster jig on there. And the only time this ever comes out of this area here and gets wheeled into the shop is strictly when I'm going to do some threading, which is not very often. I just noticed over here I didn't do this on purpose, but this is the very first thing that I ever turned in my life. It's a little tiny bowl. It's about 3 inches in diameter, and it's about 1.5 inches thick at the bottom. So that was the very first thing that I ever did. And the other one next to it would be the second thing that I ever did. You should always keep the very early things that you did just for memory, so that
just a minute,
you could look back on it and see how you could see how you progress.
Yeah.
I have a jigsaw over here, and I could tell you exactly how many times this jigsaw has been used. I only have this jigsaw because I was in Lowe's once. Lowe's here in the U.S. is a big home improvement supply company like Home Depot. And they had this saw on sale after Christmas for $200. And I used to do scroll saw work, so I figured, oh, I have to have that. So I bought it, and it has never yet seen a piece of wood through the blade. But someday, maybe I will. Now, getting into these little cabinets over here, they're just loaded with hardware, screws, nuts, and bolts, just because I hate running out to the hardware store when you need a bolt. So I usually buy them in larger size boxes so that I always have something when I need it. And then, of course, every time something comes up, you still always need another bolt that you don't have. Here is the wood rack. It's getting kind of empty, but it still has enough maple on the lower shelves here for quite a few more basket illusions. So I don't need to make a trip to the hardwood dealer yet, but it should get me through for a while. And on this other wall here is just a drum sander. Hiding behind there is a bicycle. You might see some of it that hasn't seen the street in probably 15 years. Here is the Rose engine. This is on wheels, so this gets wheeled into the shop when I want to use it. I inherited this Rose engine from a friend in Atlanta, the Rose engine. So this is something that was built by somebody else, named Dr. Susie Tyndall. And but it is a lot of fun. It's just a very slow process. Business here. I was out here at the Rose engine. I don't know why it died off on me, but it should not have done that. But anyway, in these drawers here on the Rose engine are various things that go along with the Rose engine. Hiding here in the corner here is my air compressor. It's a big 60-gallon, 2-cycle with a 6-horsepower industrial motor on there. It makes a lot of air very quickly. Hiding over here is lots of wood. Most of what's over here is exotics and burls. So up on the top here are all kinds of assorted woods. Down on this shelf here, most of what you see on this shelf is blackwood. So all of this stuff over here is all blackwood. There's some pink ivory hiding here on the left side. I got quite a bit of the Spectra plywood that I use for lidded boxes and Christmas ornaments and things like that. Down here's some more burls. Here's a box of burl scraps that I just can't seem to let myself throw away because I just love burl. And I always figure that there's something hidden in each one of those little scraps, for even if it's just a collar or something for a hollow vessel. Hiding over here is just more nuts and bolts and things like that. A couple of burl caps hiding down there. And then in these drawers over here are just more tools. There's routers, sanders, angle grinders, all kinds of things. So most of it I rarely use anymore. And hiding up there is just some jigsaw nail guns, circular saw, things like that. And some more spindle stock on the top over there. So I have things all over the place. And as I told you before, I'm not very well organized. So my philosophy is that when I check out of this world, whenever that will be, whoever comes in here to go through my shop and to help my wife evaluate all of my equipment and my tools and my wood and everything, and to go sell it off or whatever they decide to do with it, I want them to have fun. I want it to be a treasure hunt for them. If I had it all nicely organized, you know, they would be able to find everything, and everything that goes with a router would be with the router, and you know, all the woods of certain species would be all together. You know, it would just be too predictable. So I want them all to come in here and have a treasure hunt and just keep finding things and have fun going through my stuff whenever that time should happen. Hopefully not soon, but I'm not getting any younger. So somebody asked about the wheels on this lathe over here. I think you're talking about those wheels there. So do they interfere with the lathe? The answer is, I don't know. I only put the wheels on that lathe so that I could move it from place to place. Now, my shop has a rubber floor. It's got these rubber tiles, and the entire shop, for the most part, is covered with this rubber floor. So it's very difficult to move anything on it. It also bunches up in the summertime. You get buckles in it. And I did try to expansion around the walls and around the machines so that it could move, but it still seems to buckle up in the summertime. The lathe, however, is right on the cement floor, so it can be wheeled around. If it was up on the rubber tiles, I would not be able to move it at all. So I don't know if it would cause vibration or anything in the lathe, because as I said, I haven't used the lathe ever since I got the second one. It just sits here and it looks pretty, but like I said, I haven't turned anything on there in many years. But I would guess that if I was turning large work on there, like large hollow vessels and things like that, or especially unbalanced wood, it would probably be a problem. Okay, so we're gonna walk around a little bit more here. So over here, this table is just where I do some finishing. I prefer to do my finishing outside the shop so that it keeps the dust off it. There's a bunch of lidded boxes over here, all little pedestal boxes that I've been working on because I have a demo coming up where I'm going to be demonstrating that next week. So I've been practicing doing a lot of them, making sure I remember the sequence, because I don't do those all that often. And then coming around here, there's just more wood just for the treasure hunt for whoever comes in here and goes through my stuff. A lot of this is just domestic wood from trees that I've harvested, or wood that I've harvested locally here. So nothing of great importance in there. Another habit I do have is in this box here, if I take this thing out of the way here, every time I turn little pieces of ebony or blackwood for dowels or for finials for ornaments, I always like to dump the little offcuts in this box here. I don't know why, but I do that. And every now and then, if I need a tiny little 1-inch piece of ebony, I can go in that box and I'll find it, rather than have to take a larger piece. We're walking out of the shop area into the finished area of the basement. So starting out over here is just some recent stuff. This is all done since we've been in social isolation. I started finishing up some roughed out bowls, and these just, I have no place to put them, so they're just sitting here on top of this little cabinet for now. But as we walk over to here, these shelves are just loaded with stuff. So we'll go through them rather quickly. So this is an older Basket Illusion piece here. This is done inside and outside. I don't know if you could see the inside. I thought I had a flashlight with me so that I could show you the inside, but I don't remember what I did with the flashlight. So we'll worry about that when we get upstairs. There's just a bunch of lidded boxes that I've done. There's some more up there. I've done lots of lidded boxes. They always sell very well. Then I started trying to do Basket Illusion lidded boxes. So these actually open. And there's a little bowl that I did on the Rose engine. There's a couple of pieces down here that are done by others. That ornament on the right is from Walt Wager. And these two little things in the middle are from Ernie Newman over in Australia. And this inlay was from, I think, Jan Adams over in Louisiana. And here's a couple of little bowls here and some hollow vessels hiding over there. Some Basket Illusions down on the bottom, some older ones down there. And here's a goblet over there. There's a little pierced vessel over there. And then here are some hollow vessels with collars that I made on the Rose engine. For the most part, the work that I've been doing with the Rose engine is really just to make collars for hollow vessels. Here's a square Basket Illusion that I was experimenting with to see if I could actually do a Basket Illusion on square wood. And it can be done. Not sure why I did that, Next to it is a little square platter with a beaded dome in the middle. And this is a demo that I do. I'm also doing a demo on this next week also. So I'm doing the lidded box on, I think, Wednesday, and then the square platter on Thursday. And here's a couple of recent basket illusion pieces here. This one is designated to go to the AAW's auction that they're having. It's the auction they were supposed to have in June for the symposium, but they're not, of course, not having the symposium, so they're still going to have the auction. And this is done inside and out. I don't know if you could see the inside very well. As I said, I brought a flashlight with me, but then I don't know what I did with it. Maybe if I move here directly under the light, you could see a little better. There you go. Most of the basket illusions that I do now are similar to these, where the piece is done inside and out. I rarely do any vessels where I'm only doing the outside. There's another one hanging around down there. And we got a little cowboy hat and a little burl bowl. This is a very recent piece here. Also done on the inside. And some hollow vessels there. And there's a little piece here that I was experimenting with, trying to do what I call more of a pottery illusion, where I just sort of paint right on the wood without doing the basket illusion work. And then there's a pierced vessel hiding in the middle and a beaded vessel on the other side. And up there we have a nice maple burl platter and another maple burl platter on this side. And here we have some nice mesure birch. It's one of my favorite woods to turn. Very expensive wood, but beautiful wood. And then over here we have some more hollow vessels with rose engine type collars on them. So this is a nice piece of camphor burl with a rose engine collar on the top. And the other two are similar. This was another one of my attempts at what I call the pottery illusion. So this is basically just painted directly on the wood with India ink. And then you got a few more basket illusions next to it. And then down below, just a couple other things, some beaded vessels down on the lower shelf. And then we have a bed over here. So when my wife gets mad at me, I can come down here and learn how to apologize for whatever I did. Some older basket illusions on the bottom. Moving up, some more basket illusions there. And then as we go up here, we have a couple platters hiding in the back. This one here is another one of those pottery illusion pieces that I was doing. That's another basket illusion over there. And a few more basket illusions up on the top. And we move down here. We have all kinds of hollow vessels. I love turning hollow vessels. I mean, for me, that's my primary focus. I do everything, but I enjoy hollow vessels more than anything. And hiding over there on the right-hand side, that black piece is by our one and only Pat Carroll. He left that here when he visited back in June of 2016. And down on the bottom here, I'm going to bring this piece out because I do like to show my failures. So this is 3 weeks of my life that I will never get back. I was attempting to do a piece for Rainbow Pride, and everything that could go wrong went wrong. This is done inside and out. But I had a problem in the beginning, and I should have quit then and started over, but I didn't. I figured it would come out okay, and it didn't. I don't know, you probably can't see it as well on the camera, but it is disgustingly ugly to me. So it sits here on the bottom, and it will never see the light of day. And I keep telling myself I should do it over, but I just haven't gotten to that. Hiding down here is another square platter with the beaded dome in the middle. That's a large one. That's about a 15-inch platter hiding down there. And over here, I'm going to show you the very first basket illusion that I've ever done. Is this one right here. This goes back probably 9 years ago. I was still working for a living then, and I didn't know how to do this. So I just tried to reverse engineer what David Nittman was doing and figure out how to do it on my own. Of course, the choice of colors is overwhelming, and having this bullseye in the middle was a horrible thing to do, but it was my very first attempt at it. And then down here on the floor, there are some other things, some of the sea urchin type of ornaments. I've done probably hundreds of those. Some ice cream scoops. There's another one of those square platters with the beaded dome in the middle. So if anybody's ever seen me talk about doing the basket illusion when I do demos of it, I always say that I do my work sitting in a recliner chair. So I'm not kidding. This is the chair I sit in right here. And you can see on the table next to me, I have my wood burner and all kinds of things that I need. And sitting in the cup holders of the chair are various India ink markers. Sitting over here, more markers and more markers. And here's a piece that is in progress right now. I just started working on this one recently. So I've got some of the ink work done on it. And this is the pattern that I'm attempting to do. When it's done, that's what it should look like. So it's a bunch of sort of square Celtic knots, if you please. Keeping track of the overs and the unders is mind-boggling. So that's why I sort of do it in stages, basically laying out all the outline work first, and then fill it in after I get all the outline work done. So as I said, when I tell you that I sit in the recliner chair, that is exactly where I sit right there. And over here, I got my boxes of India ink markers sitting here, waiting to be called into action. And there's a couple little basket illusion pieces over here that just haven't been finished in terms of, I haven't sprayed them yet. So these are just little small pieces. This is about 8 inches, and that's about maybe 7 inches. This is something I experimented with to see if I could do basket illusion and rose engine at the same time. So this has a little rose engine work in the middle and also scalloped around the outside on the rose engine. And I never got back to it to actually make a basket illusion out of it, but it's on the list of things to do. So that's about it down here. And I'm going to take you upstairs now. And upstairs is where you'll see most of my basket illusions. So try not to get dizzy here now as we exit the man cave. And then we're going to head to the stairs. And hopefully I don't trip carrying the camera up the stairs. I have it on a tripod. Still don't know what I did with that flashlight. Okay, so coming up here. So here's a whole bunch of my basket illusions. So all of these are done inside and out. These are all fairly recent pieces. And you might be able to see the inside. It's maybe bright enough here. This one here in the middle, the very colorful one, is the largest piece that I've done where I've done the inside as well as the outside. This piece is about 11 inches tall, done in 2 sections, 2 halves. And then just a few more, of course, also done on the inside. And then walking around the room, we have some platters over here Another large platter over here. This is about a 15-inch or so platter. And on the floor, just a bunch of old hollow vessels. Some more platters over here. Very nice outside today, as you can see. And here's very large bowls that I've done. These are done with wood that is very wet. Get up here, see if I could show you that. So these are very large. These are about 16-inch diameter bowls. And I turn them with the wood freshly cut. And I do all the beading work. And then I let the wood dry. And when it dries, it warps. I don't know if you could see that much on the camera. But it actually gives it a very organic shape and makes it look much more like a natural basket than turning dry wood. I've done about, I think, 6 of those. And they're all very large pieces. There's another one right here. And walking around this way here, hiding on the corner here is probably the largest basket illusion I ever did. This is 20 inches in diameter, which is the maximum you can get on the Powermatic there. It was done in mahogany wood, which is a poor choice of wood for basket illusion because it doesn't take the beads very well. So it's kind of chippy. So instead of being beaded, it's more of a flat surface, sort of like little tiles. And there's just some hollow vessels surrounding it on the floor. And over here is another bunch of pieces. So you got some basket illusions. This spiral vessel here is, I've done 2 of those. Stuart Mortimer is one of my very good friends. I'm sure you all know him very well over there. But when you spend some time with Stuart, you can't help but come away having learned to do that. So I did try to do the spiral finial on the top, but I failed miserably. So it got a regular finial instead. And then looking down, we got a few more basket illusions hiding over there, and a little cowboy hat there. This you also might recognize as a Stuart Batty egg. Stuart Mortimer's egg. And that's an Alan Batty threaded mushroom over there. This is the organ that I haven't played in I don't know how long. For those of you that know, when I was young and had hair, I played the organ in rock bands back in the late 60s and early 70s. So this organ's been sitting here. It's been struck by lightning once, so it doesn't work right now. I need to rebuild the power supply. And someday I'll do that, but it probably hasn't been played in, I don't know, 20 years maybe. So what else we have here? There's another Stuart Mortimer piece hiding back there. And that's one of those sea urchin shells that I did for ornaments. And there's a nice vessel with a little oriental top on it. Hiding over here is another basket illusion. And we're almost done. A few more things I think I'll show you on this side over here. Don't get dizzy now, we're walking. Oh, I just did these cigar tubes. These are for my son who's getting married in November. He's going to give these to his groomsmen as a gift. So I did those for him. Of course, I think he's putting the cigar in them. And then I don't smoke cigars, by the way. Hiding over here are a bunch of goblets with twisty stems. 1 or 2 of these might have been Stuart Mortimer's, and the rest are mine. And of course, a bunch of bottle stoppers. I used to do a couple of shows that I thought bottle stoppers would be a big seller, but I was wrong. They weren't. There's another little Australian burl natural edge bowl. Here's a jigsaw puzzle that wife and I are debating starting again. My wife does a lot of cross-stitch work. So these are hanging up all around our house here. Here's another basket illusion hiding over here in this corner. No shortage of those in this house. And I've also done some round picture frames. My wife does, as I said, she does the cross stitching, and I made the picture frames for the cross stitch. Learned that from George Hatfield over in Australia. Okay, so I think we're done up here. So now we're gonna go back down to the shop, and we'll switch over to the other camera, and then we can talk and answer any questions you might have. Don't get dizzy as we go down the stairs here. Back to the man cave. This is my office here. That's my photo set up right there. Just have a backdrop, and I put my iPhone on the camera, on the tripod, and that's where I shoot the pictures that go up on my website. Okay, don't get dizzy now. We're walking, we're walking, we're walking, we're walking. Back into the basement here. Okay, so that's what you see is what you get. Let me lower the volume on this other one so I don't have to hear the echo. Actually, I'll silence it even better. Okay, so that's pretty much what I had to show you in terms of shop and the body of work that I do. I just want to talk a little bit about basket illusion and what got me going and started doing that, and why I do pretty much only basket illusion these days. So when I showed you that piece, that was the very first piece that I ever did, I tried to figure out and learn how to do that on my own because no one was teaching it, and there were no write-ups or articles or anything, any tutorials or YouTubes or anything like that on how to do it. So I made my own beading tool, learned how to index the piece. I was using Sharpies as coloring markers. And when I first did that first piece, of course, I was very, very proud of it at the time, and I displayed it like crazy. Now I'm ashamed of it, but it sort of sparked the fire in me for that. But as I said, I was still working for a living at the time, so I never went back to it until after I retired. So when I retired at the very end of 2012, beginning in 2013 now, I'm coming down into the shop every single day, and I'm turning every single day. And every day I'm bringing, every week I'm bringing about a dozen finished pieces up into the house, and there's absolutely no place to put it. So my wife said, you got to stop doing this. You either got to get another hobby, you got to start working, finding a gallery, you got to get things out of the house. You're just making too much stuff. Give it away, do something with it. So I decided I would go back to the basket illusion to slow myself down and not make so many pieces. So I did go back to the basket illusion, and I tried to make a better beading tool, one that was a little bit smaller. And those of you know that Cynthia Gibson, she's a fantastic pyrographer. She used to live here in Atlanta. She's a good friend. And she told me about these Indian ink markers made by Faber-Castell, and she advised me that I should try them. They'd be much better. So I did that. And that was a turning point there, right there, because then working with much better quality ink that's archival, permanent, and doesn't penetrate the wood as deeply, so it's easier to clean up a mistake that you might make. So then I learned about D-Way's beading tools. And when I got my first beading tools, that's when I couldn't stop with the basket illusion, because now making beads was such an easy thing to do, and I could make such consistent, perfect beads every single time. With the D-Way beading tools, that got the skill level up tremendously. So probably about within 4 or 5 months of my retirement date, now I'm doing basket illusion all the time. and I can pretty much do maybe 2 pieces a month. For probably 5 years, I was traveling a lot, doing demonstrating and teaching. So some months maybe I would only do 1, and some months I didn't get any done. But for the most part, I can get 2 done every month. And that's pretty much what my output is. So now I don't flood the house with as many pieces as I was before. And I'm also working with a very prestigious gallery in Asheville, North Carolina, the Blue Spiral 1 gallery. So I've got about a dozen pieces on display over there. Unfortunately, they're closed right now, only selling online, because of COVID. They've sold, I think, 3 of my pieces since I started with them in September. Most of my sales are private people. I don't know how they find me, but they do. And I would estimate that since I started doing Basket Illusion, I have probably, if I had to take a guess, I might say that I've done maybe 150 Basket Illusion pieces, and I probably sold maybe close to half of them. And maybe I'm a little high on the number. Maybe it's more like 125. I don't really know. I don't count them. I do have my failures, though. No one's perfect. Not every piece makes it to the get in front of the camera. A lot of pieces never see the light of day. Like that Rainbow Pride piece that I showed you, that was just a disaster. And 3 weeks of my life that I'll never get back. Should have cut my losses on it, but I didn't. So anyway, so I love doing the Basket Illusion. I'm passionate about it. Inspiration, there's a lot of places you can get inspiration without copying other people's work. If you just search for any kind of basketry, African baskets, Native American baskets, Southwest baskets, or in my case, what I look for more is pottery. I look for Pueblo pots, Southwestern pots, Moroccan pottery. There's a tremendous amount of inspiration that I find doing that. And often I might just take 1 or 2 elements that I find on some particular pot or basket and use that as the focal point of my Basket Illusion, and then I'll just do my own work all around it. And then other times I just make them up. For example, the piece that I showed you that I'm working on now is I just designed that on my own. I do most of my designs on the computer using the program called Inkscape, which lets me actually design it on the computer as if I was doing it on graph paper. So it's much easier to delete or copy when you're doing it, so it makes it go a lot quicker. And then, of course, you can change colors. If you do it in blue and you want to see what it looks like in red, it's very easy to change it. And then you can print it and go to work on it. So that's my story about Basket Illusion. And if you want to start, take some questions.
Okay, Harvey, I think the first thing to say to you is, wow. I guess I'm lucky I've had the experience of seeing your work firsthand when you graciously invited me into your home. And I don't care how good your monitors or screens are, none of those pictures do any of that work justice. It's just fantastic.
Thank you.
So thanks for that tour, Harvey. Right, yeah, you did good getting the seat. You're going to need it. A few people surprised, Harvey, you actually use dark wood when you're doing some of your pieces because of the coloring, I assume. That's the reason for asking.
Well, on the Basket Illusion, I haven't used any dark wood. Some of the wood has darkened a little bit, but I would still consider them all to be light woods. It might just be the lighting that we were in when I was showing them to you. But I typically use maple, hard maple, which is very light wood. And I also use local wood, Bradford pear, for the vessels. And that also is a very, very light colored wood.
Okay, presuming a friend of yours, Dennis Belcher, would like to know how long it took you to clean up your shop.
It's really not that clean. You just can't see it. It's cleaner than it's been. And I did a thorough cleaning in November. No, maybe it was December. Usually every year in November or December, I open the doors and I blow everything out. I give it a good thorough cleaning. So This is about 6 months since the last thorough cleaning. So this was basically just wiping down the surfaces and vacuuming. There's a lot of dust in here up above and so forth.
Okay.
So I don't know, Dennis. I can't answer you that.
Did you find much of an improvement, Harvey, going from the 3520A to the 3520B?
No. I mean, to me, they're the exact same lathe. The only difference between the two lathes is the B has speed readout, which I never look at anyway, because after turning on the A for so many years, I didn't have a speed readout, so I didn't know what the speed was. It's just that you go by the gut feeling, you know, does this feel right? Does it feel safe? So I never really look at it. And the only other thing is it has double bearings in the front side of the headstock instead of single bearings, but that makes no difference in the performance of the lathe. So the answer to the question is there's no difference to me.
Okay. Can you suggest any books for people on the basket illusion, please?
Books, no. Videos, yes. I mean, if you want to learn how to do it, I've demonstrated this probably 50, 60 times over the last 5, 6 years. And I do have some videos that are on YouTube, and you can access those videos from my website. If you go to harveymeyer.com and click on the videos page, the very first one is probably the best video that I've had done. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes long, a complete demonstration of how to do basket illusion. I also wrote an article for the AAW magazine. It was in October of 2016. So if you're an AAW member and you have the issue, you can look it up or you can get it online. There are other people that have done YouTube videos on basket illusion as well. Some good, some not so good. I won't comment on them, but there are others that have done basket illusion work on YouTube too. As far as books or magazines, the only other reference that you can get in writing would be things like to look up for inspiration. Like you can get books or magazines on, Native American baskets and things like that, where you can find some patterns or get some inspiration from it. But I don't know of anything written on how to do the basket illusion other than the article that I wrote for the AAW journal.
Well, I think that gives good cause for you to start writing a book, Harvey.
I don't know.
Somebody asked, is the cost of the Rose engine justified by just using it on colors of vessels?
Probably not. But again, as I said, I didn't build it or make it or pay for it. It was, I inherited it from a friend who passed away. So for the most part, I have no investment in it other than the memory of Dr. Susie Tyndall. I have done more than just collars for lidded boxes, for vessels. I've done some inserts for tops of lidded boxes, and I also did a little rose engine bowl one time. The learning curve is kind of steep on it, and I had actually intended to go to the Ornamental Turners Symposium this September, which was going to be in Chicago, but that's been canceled because of COVID. And I did, when I was over in the UK at the AWGB conference back last October, I did spend quite a bit time in the OTI room talking with the ornamental turners over there, and they enlightened me on a lot of stuff. But again, there's still, there's a learning curve, and I just haven't really gotten around to doing that much with it yet. So if you paid for that and, paid for all that stuff and built it yourself, then making collars for vessels is probably not the best use of the machine. But I do hope to do more with it.
Okay, Harvey. A lot of people wondering what is wrong with the Rainbow Pride vessel, because
everything. I'll try to be brief. I had troubles when I indexed the inside. As you know, those pieces are done in two halves that are glued together. So if you can imagine two bowls that are glued together, I mean, that's the way those vessels are done. So there you have the secret if you didn't know. So when of course, I do all the inside work first. And when I was indexing the inside, something got thrown off a little bit, and I'm not quite sure where it was or how it happened. But I've since updated upgraded my indexing system so that can never happen again. So when I went to glue the two halves together, all the index lines between the top half and the bottom half didn't line up. So no matter how I twisted the two halves, I couldn't get the index lines or the pattern on the inside to flow from top through the bottom. So when I finally got it to flow where about 90% of it looked good, now when I glue the two halves together, instead of the grain running in the same direction on the top and the bottom, now they were like this and crossing each other. So first of all, that's not a good thing to do, because with wood movement, that can crack at the joint. And the other thing it did is it puts the side grain here on one piece and then the end grain here on the top piece, and vice versa. So whenever you're coloring on the side grain, the colors are lighter. When you color into the end grain, the colors are darker. So when you look at the piece on the bottom, where you see lighter color, on the top you see darker color. And then when you turn the piece 90 degrees, you see the lighter color on the top and the darker color on the bottom, and you keep turning it around, and it's got all that mishmash in it. Again, a lot of people wouldn't even see that, but to me, it's not my standard, so it never sees the light of day.
Okay, Harvey. Okay, somebody asked, how long would you spend on a piece? Could you maybe give an approximate size and time frame on one, maybe?
The most I've ever spent is close to 200 hours. The least, probably 40, 50. Just depends. The pieces where I do the inside and outside, obviously those take a lot of time, and they probably average, I don't know, because I don't really keep track anymore, but they probably average about 120 hours. If I just do the outside of, let's say I'm doing a 10-inch vessel and turning it and beating it, is maybe 2 hours of work. And then the rest of the time is done in the chair, and maybe 60 to 80 hours, depending on the complexity of the pattern. 12-inch platter done on both sides, roughly 80, maybe it's 2 hours turning time and roughly 80 hours, depending on the complexity of the pattern and how many index segments I did.
Okay, somebody asked how you turn your vessel, how you put the beading on the inside of the vessels. You've answered that in two halves. Mike Gibson answered very carefully. So,
and also, believe it or not, with a very small beading tool. I could show you the difference. So this is a normal beading tool, as D-Way sells them, and this is the one that I use on the inside. So if you could see the difference in the length, it's about 2 inches shorter, which allows you don't need a handle on these, but it allows you to get inside the piece without the end of the tool hitting on the rim of the bowl.
okay, just a question about your photo backdrop, Harvey. Is that something you made yourself or a purchase?
I purchased that. It's graduated photo backdrop. It's 24 by 36 inches. It's made by Varitone, Varitone, and I want to say it goes for about $30 US.
Yeah, I've looked at them on Amazon. They're far more than that, even on Amazon.
I think I found it on eBay.
Okay. Do you do craft fairs, Harvey?
No longer. When I first retired, I got invited to do an art show. It was supposed to be a high-end art show, and it was at the Atlanta Country Club, which is a very hoity-toity golf club here in the Atlanta area. And it was going to be indoors, and the only people that would attend it were by invitation only. It wasn't open to the public, and I wasn't going to do it because I figured they weren't going to have much foot traffic in there. But I figured, what do I got to lose? So this is before I was doing Vascular Illusion too. So I signed up to do it, and over 2 evenings and 1 afternoon, I sold about $3,000 worth of stuff. And I brought a lot of bottle stoppers and ornaments and things like that with me, low cost things, and I sold none of that. And what we're selling were the more expensive $700-800 pieces. So after I paid my fee and paid my 15% commission to their charity, I still walked out of there with over $2,000. And I said, oh, this is great. I could do this all the time. So the following year, they invited me back. And I went a second time. They gave me the same booth and all that. And now I had some basket illusion pieces with me as well. And I don't think I walked out of there with $300 after the same amount of time. So now I'm a little less excited about it. And then I was invited to do another show. So I did that one as well. That was 3 days I spent sitting there, and I barely covered the booth fee and maybe made enough to pay for my lunch. So that was the last time I decided I'm not doing that anymore. I started working with a couple of galleries in Atlanta. I've since pulled out of those. And the only gallery I work with now is this one in Asheville, North Carolina. But most of my sales are private. People find me, I don't know how. They find it on my website. They send me an email, ask about a piece. I give them a price. If they want to buy it, they buy it. If they don't, it's okay.
Okay, the program, Harvey, that you use for creating your patterns, your designs?
It's called Inkscape. It's very similar to Adobe Illustrator. It's a program used by graphic designers. Very complicated software to use. I probably don't use 1% of what it can do, but I'm not a graphic designer, and I don't even know what some of the words on the menus, what those words on the menus even mean. However, I figured out enough to be able to draw a polar grid or a regular grid, and I learned how to click on the boxes and make the boxes turn color. So I can either color one box or many boxes all at once and color in my pattern that way. And then I learned how to copy and paste, so I can just do a segment of the piece and then copy and paste it all around the platter, or so, and do it like that. I probably using less than 1% of the capability of the program. But the thing about Inkscape, though, is it's free. It's open source software, so you can download Inkscape from inkscape.org, and it's the full-blown version of the software, absolutely free. Whereas Adobe Illustrator, you got to pay for that on a monthly subscription, and then once you stop paying, they take the software away from you. So even if you pay for it for 5 years, the day you don't pay for it anymore, you don't have it anymore.
Okay, probably an impossible question, this one, Harvey. Any upcoming classes for the end of this year or next year?
For this year, no, certainly not. The only two places that I've been teaching here in the U.S. is at the Campbell Folk School and Arrowmont. I retired from the Campbell Folk School last May after my last class there. I'm still in the rotation for Arrowmont, and I would probably be scheduled to teach there next year. But now that they've canceled all their classes for this year, so everything may get advanced out a year, so I don't know. So the answer is I have nothing in the immediate future. Okay.
Do you rough turn your vessels and let them dry completely? And we can't see any of them, is someone's question.
So for the vessels where I do the inside and outside, those are all done with kiln dried hard maple. And so basically I buy 8-quarter hard maple and I laminate 2 pieces together for the bottom and then another 2 pieces for the top, which gives me a vessel of close to 8 inches tall. So that's all kiln dried, so no need for roughing anything out there. That's just all done in one turning session. When I'm doing vessels where I use Bradford pear, which is a local wood here in the southeast, that I typically get it when it's freshly cut. So when I turn that, I really get a bath. And you could probably see, I don't know if you could still see the splash marks on the wall behind me and in front of me from the wood. So those I rough turn. I leave them about 5/16 of an inch thick, and I put them in a paper bag, and I weigh them about every week. And when they stop losing weight, then I'll take them and return them the second time and do the beating on them. The problem that I do have with them is in order to get large enough vessels, you have to leave the pith in the middle. And you know what happens when you leave the pith in the middle? Your wood is very susceptible to cracking. So sometimes I get lucky and I could do 5, 6 pieces in a row and not even the slightest crack. And then sometimes I get 5 or 6 in a row and they crack so bad that I just toss them. I don't know why. I can't figure out if it's the time of year that they're cut or the climate in my shop or whatever. But anyway, to answer the question, if I'm working with green wood, yes, I rough them out. And then I pray that they don't crack.
Don't we all, Harvey?
Yeah.
What index system do you use, Harvey? And would you mind showing it if it's easily accessible?
Okay. So for a long time, I used my own indexing system. I made my own. I make my own index wheels and I made my own indexing jigs. And then, as I said, when I did that Rainbow Pride vessel, the inaccuracies in my indexing system, I think, are partly what caused the problem. So I've now switched over to a very accurate system that I use. And I could show you. So for example, this would be one of my index wheels. And I would mount that on the lathe behind the chuck. And I have these in all different, this one is good for either 80 or 160 segments. And this one's good for either 72 or 144. And if you're just doing platters or you're just doing a hollow vessel where you can index the entire piece, this is fine. It works very, very well. But when you're going to do those pieces where you have to draw 2 halves together, you can't have even 1/1000th of an inch of interpretation errors. So I switched over to a more exacting system. Now you got to keep in mind that this would be mounted behind the chuck. And then I would use a something like this to hold a pencil. Actually, I could switch over to my other camera here. Oh no, why can't I switch? Oh yeah, I gotta get into zoom here. Wrong camera. Edge dock. Why is that showing?
Your grinder at the moment, Harvey.
Yeah, that's the other. Got the wrong one spotlighted. Let me spotlight this one here. There we go. So this would sit on a board over here. Lower that down a little bit. So this would sit on a board, and then I would have the index wheel set up here, and I'd have a little guide over here that I line up with the lines on the index wheel, and then I would draw the pencil line like this, and then I would advance the index one notch, and I would line up the line on the index wheel with my guide by eye, and I would draw the line, and I would keep doing that, draw the line, keep doing that. So if you're just doing a platter and the lines are pretty close, it's fine. They don't have to be exactly perfect, and you don't want them to be exactly perfect. But when you're doing those vessels where you need the inside and the outside to be exact, that's where the challenge came in. So now I have this commercial index wheel. And this is good up to 192 on the outer. So I can index it to 192 using the outer ring, 144 for the second one, 120, 96, 88, and 56. Now this, I didn't make this. This is made by Easy Jigs in New Hampshire. He's the only one that makes an index wheel that can go up to 192. So with this on here, now I have these holes, and I have a jig that actually goes and puts a pin in the hole so that I'm lining up that index wheel exactly. I'm not having to interpret the line with my eye anymore. So that means every time I move this, it's moving exactly 1 notch. And then for drawing the pencil lines, I built a sled, a platform actually that sits on the lathe over here. I could show you that if you indulge me for a moment. Actually, it sits on the banjo. So I have this. Okay, so I have this, and the platter would sit in here, so I can get on both sides of the platter. And then as I move the index wheel, I would take my pencil and I would draw the line on one side, draw the line on the other side, move the index wheel, draw the line, and keep going. And as long as I have this set up so that it's dead center, the pencil point is dead center, everything comes out perfect. So that was the changes that I made to be able to get the indexing extremely accurate for when I'm doing those two vessels where I got to join them together, and those index lines have got to flow from top through the bottom. So I hope that clears it up for you a little bit.
Thank you, Harvey. Okay, so sharpening your beading tools, Harvey.
Yes.
How do you go about that, please?
Very easy. So I use a diamond hone. I get the finest one that I have, and this one is a 600 grit. If you have one of those credit card size ones, those are fine too. Something like this, you know, one of these, those work as well. Or even if you have these little paddles like that, those also work. But the bigger, the better. And then I would take the bevel part of the tool here. See if you can see the bevel. And I would put that flat on the stone like that. And then I would just pull it towards me. I don't go both directions because that tends to round over the points. And I would just give it 4 or 5 licks on the diamond hone like that until it's ready to go again. And if you keep doing that, the tool will last you literally through eternity because you're not wasting away any steel. Now, after you've honed it 15 to 20 times, you start to lose your hollow grind. And then it takes longer to hone it because now you're honing more steel. So every now and then I take it to the grinder and I reestablish the hollow grind. So what I'll do with that is, if you can imagine, if this is my grinding wheel here, and I'll make believe that this is my grinding rest. What I'll do is I'll turn my grinder on until it gets up to full speed, and then I turn it off. And while it's spinning down, I bring this up against the wheel, put the heel on it first, and I raise it up until the entire bevel is flat on the grinding wheel. And then I just let the wheel spin down without moving it at all. Okay, and once the wheel stops, then I've got a perfect hollow grind reestablished, but I've only wasted maybe a micron or 2 of steel doing that. Whereas if I grind it while the grinder is on the power spinning, it's gonna cost me a lot more steel that way. And these are not inexpensive. These are here in the US, I think $53 a piece. Okay, so hone 15 times, grind once, hone 15 times, and grind once.
Okay, Harvey, that's basically all the questions. So would you just repeat what you said about your YouTube videos just for people interested?
So if you want to see basket illusion work, if you go to harveymeyer.com and click on the video menu, and then on the videos, the very first one is a 2 hours and 20-minute video that I did in Florida at Advantage Lumber, and it was done with excellent camera work, people that really were very good with the cameras. And there's another one there that I did, was very early in my basket illusion days. It's a 2-part video that I did for the Gwinnett Woodworkers Association here in Atlanta. That's probably 6 years old now. So I've changed a few things, but it's still a decent video on how to do the basics. But the total time of that is 90 minutes, whereas the other video is 2 hours and 20 minutes, much longer. So from my website, you can find those, or you could just search for my name on YouTube, or search for Basket Illusion on YouTube, and you'll find me as well as the other people that have Basket Illusion videos there.
Thank you, Harvey. Sorry, just questions are flying in now. Do you use UV protection to protect the vibrant colors?
Yes, and well, not typically. I wouldn't call it UV protection. When I finish the piece, I spray it with acrylic matte finish. It's by Krylon. I think I have a can here I could show you. Let me look. I'm looking for it. Yes, hold on one sec. This is what I use. It's Krylon matte finish. And this does not have UV protection in it. They do make one that has UV protection in it. And I did use that one time, and I found that it darkened the wood a little bit. And I didn't like that. This does not change the characteristics of the wood at all. So I spray about 5 coats of this on all sides, all surfaces. And I do that outdoors just because I don't want to smell the house up. I caution you though, if it's very hot or very humid out, don't spray this because it can milk, turn the surface milky. I did that once on a very large vessel and I panicked. So I learned that you can hit it with a hairdryer to dry up some of the moisture that's underneath the acrylic. But then I also learned that it is really a lacquer. So if you spray another coat on it, that will dissolve the previous coat, and it all should be good. However, don't do it like I did it. So when I milked it up, because it was 95 degrees and 100% humidity out and had rained about an hour ago, so then when I went outside and I sprayed another coat on it, figuring, okay, this will clear up the milking, but it's still 100% humidity. So I milked up the second coat. So take it inside into a drier area, get an exhaust fan, and then spray it, and then it will dissolve the milky surface. So I did save the piece.
Do you finish both parts, Harvey, before you put them together when you do the two piece?
I finish all of the inside on both parts, and then I will glue them together, and then I return the outside to get the final shape and to thin it down a little bit, just so that it's not as heavy. And then I'll do the beading and the indexing and sit down in the chair and burn in color.
Okay.
So everything gets done on the inside before I do the outside.
I'm going to combine a couple of questions here, Harvey. Do you have links on your website to the pens, index system, and any tools that you use? Are you an agent or?
No, I used to sell all the stuff. When I travel around demonstrating and teaching, I always would bring 30 or 40 beading tools, and I had all the burning pens, and I had burners and the ink markers, and I sold all that as I went around demonstrating and teaching. But since I'm not doing that anymore now, the only demonstrations I'm doing now are the remote demos. So I haven't been carrying the stuff anymore. I do think on my website I have links to the D-Way beading tool, and I'm pretty sure I have links to where to get the burning pens. The markers, you can get them anywhere, any art supply store. But if anybody, I could say, I have a handout that I give when I demo of where I get all the stuff. So I could send it to you if you want, and you can send it out to anybody who wants it.
That would be great. Thanks very much, Paul. I can pull it up on the AWGB site.
Okay.
Do the pens or finish raise grain at all, or does Harvey wet, apply seal or sand prior to pen work?
Okay, so no, nothing applied to the wood before I do the ink. And also I'll point out that the wood is not sanded at all in anywhere in the process. I turn the piece and the surface off the bowl gouge has to be good because no sanding. And then whatever I get off the beading tool, that's the surface that I'm going to work with the pens. So I don't put any sealant on the wood first. It's India ink. It does not raise the grain at all. Alcohol-based markers like Sharpies, Prismacolors, Copics, and others, it's much thinner and it does penetrate the wood much deeper, and it also bleeds. So it'll spread out. If you hold the marker in one place too long, it can actually spread even past the burn lines. But the India ink doesn't do that. It's pigmented, so it doesn't spread and it doesn't penetrate deeply. So if you make a mistake, you can shave it away with a scalpel whereas with alcohol dyes, you would have to carve it away very deeply, and it would be noticeable.
Okay. How many times will you sharpen the beading tool per vessel, Harvey?
None. So I start out with it sharp, and I go through the whole vessel. I do a platter. I do both sides of the platter. I don't have to sharpen it. The
Okay.
beading tools are made out of M42 steel, which has got, I think, 10% cobalt in it. So it stays sharp incredibly long time. It's a very high quality tool.
Okay. Lots of people praising you, Harvey, and your work and the presentation. Lots of
Thank
thanks.
you.
You have had 160 people in here at one stage. We're down to 113 now because there's been one or two tech questions, but we're going to exhaust the wood turning before we get into that. And we're very near the end of that. Yeah, so basically, and I know from my own experience, I did a little bit of basket illusion, and when I wanted help, Harvey gave me tons of help, and unfortunately I didn't follow through on doing much of it, but yeah, Harvey is the man for this. So any more questions? I think we're kind of, and people from all over the world, Harvey, as well again tonight. So thankfully Paul upped the subscription, so we were able to accommodate everyone tonight, which is great.
Well,
So
thank you everybody for joining me and spending your evening or afternoon or whatever it is where you are with me. Appreciate that.
well, thank you for your time, Harvey, and it's obviously you put a lot of effort into this, which is greatly appreciated. So
But now the shop is clean and I don't want to get it dirty again.